It's time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
Well, thanks for joining us, folks. I'm Sam Lesante. You're watching The Sam Lesante Show. Hey, I have a story for you. Here's an interesting story. Now, you go to the doctor, and unfortunately, the doctor tells you you have to have a very serious operation. And, of course, it's frustrating for you, so you get in the car, and you're driving down the road, and then you see a sign in someone's yard that says, Dr. Lesante, great surgeon. You go down the street, you see a billboard, Dr. Lesante, great surgeon. Then there's billboards and there's signs all over the place about Dr. Lesante and what kind of great surgeon he is. Then you go home and you talk to your spouse and say, listen, I know who's going to operate on me, Dr. Lesante. Why? Well, he has billboards and he has signs all over the place. And your spouse looks and say, are you out of your mind? You go to a surgeon just because there's billboards and signs all over the place? What do you know about that person? What does that person have to do? How many surgeries he has? What's his background or her background? And folks, that's what happens when it comes to elections. We let signs tell us what to do. Now, signs are important when you know who the person is. Then it's a reminder that this is the person that I want to vote for. So I applaud anyone who's running for office, and I'm not knocking signs or billboards, but if you don't know who you are, you got a problem. Every one of you are paying $5,000 to $10,000 more a year because of inflation. Well, we put people in office, sometimes you don't know. But today, we're going to talk to a candidate who's running for Schuylkill County Judge. No strangers to some people. Bill Burke is here. And Bill, nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sam.
It's interesting how, we look at our lives today, and sometimes people say, well, why should I be concerned about school board or judge or city council or mayors? But it affects our lives, okay? I think it's important to know who the person is. Today, for those people who do not know Bill Burke, tell me a little bit about yourself, Bill.
Well, it's not a complicated story. I am the son of Stanley Burke, who we lost this past May. He was a World War II veteran. He was an attorney. He was the hero of my life. I am also the son of Melvia Brennan Burke, who is also deceased. And what I could tell you is I had an excellent childhood. A lot of people may complain about their upbringing, but I had an excellent childhood. My mom and dad were always there. They provided for us. I have a brother, Stanley Jr., who's an attorney in Pottsville, and I have a sister, Susan, who lives in Bucks County. I grew up in Port Carbon. I still live in Port Carbon. That's my hometown. For lack of better terms, it was kind of a Norman Rockwell upbringing. I lived in between a garment factory, H.L. Miller, and the Kaiser aluminum plant. And when 4:30 rolled around, the fathers all came home with their lunch buckets. And it was nice to see the fathers coming with my friends, and we would greet them when they came in. The Pennsylvania Railroad also ran at the other end of our street, and we would hear the trains going by. So that's the kind of upbringing I had. I had an excellent upbringing. My mom and dad were always there for me.
What schools did you go to?
Well, I started in St. Stephen's Parochial School in Port Carbon. I then went to Pottsville Area High School. My father, after my high school education, in his own words, said, you need some starch in your collar. So he sent me to Perkiomen School for a year. Then I attended my beloved University of Scranton, which is up at Interstate 81 from here. And I later attended Thomas M. Cooley Law School in Lansing, Michigan.
When did you decide that you wanted to go into law, and why?
Well, it was probably grade school. I mean, it was expected of me in some ways by my parents. But my dad practiced law in Shenandoah and New Philly. Much to my mother's annoyance, he had a makeshift office in our house in Port Carbon, which was our dining room table. So even as a child and later as an adolescent, I attended many real estate settlements, not playing any role, but just observing what my dad did. Will signings, power of attorneys, or even workers' compensation, and back then black lung. So I knew from the get-go that that's what I was going to do. I was a young guy. I wanted to be like my dad because he helped people and people respected him. And my dad was a humble man.
And so at that particular time, you decided you were going to go into law.
Yes.
All right. So when you went into law, is there certain areas that you wanted to cover in law?
Well, my dad, used to say sole practice is gratifying, but it's not a sole practice. It's a law office of me, myself, and I. So what I wanted to do mainly was get into a courtroom. And that I did through the public defender's office. I also was briefly 2 years an assistant district attorney. And in addition to that, I get into court quite frequently with regard to my job in the Office of Senior Services. I'm a staff attorney. What the Office of Senior Services does is files petitions on behalf of older adults who, for whatever reason, don't have an alternate resource, whether it's a family member, they're by themselves, the family members have moved away and they're not present in the person's life, or perhaps, unfortunately, you do see cases of abuse and exploitation, and that's where we step in. And I enjoy all my aspects of practice, but the Office of Senior Services is something near and dear to my heart.
You're married?
I've been married to my wife, Lori, who's from Luzerne County. Met her in Avalon, New Jersey, happenstance on the beach, and I knew she was the one from the time I saw her. And I'm not saying that because she's 5 feet away from me. It's just the way it worked.
And you have to drive home with her.
Exactly. And in addition to that, I have a son, Bill. He's 18. He's a senior at Nativity. I'm happy to report that he's been accepted to the University of Scranton, the school of myself, my brother, and my father. And he will be matriculating there this September. And I have a daughter, Anna, who's in 8th grade, and she attends the DHH L'Engle Middle School in Pottsville. That is my family.
How long have you been practicing, Bill?
33 years now. I'm going on 33 years. My first 2 years were spent as a law clerk for the Court of Common Pleas. I had the opportunity to observe judges doing their work, how cases are settled, how cases are scheduled, and it was an invaluable experience. And that was for 2 years I did that. In addition to that, when I first became an attorney, like I said, I wanted to get into a courtroom. And I thought the best way I could hone my speaking skills was to become an adjunct professor at Penn State Schuylkill. I taught business law and I taught criminal law. And it was a combination of honing in my skills and also perhaps getting a little over the fear of public speaking. So I had the opportunity, it was, I think, a joint thing where I had an opportunity to educate some younger adults, but in addition to that, I was able to better myself in public speaking. When I got out of my clerkship, I worked with my father in Shenandoah, Pennsylvania. Again, not to harp on it, but I had the best teacher. We got along. We had our differences of opinion, but we got along. I think he taught me how to practice law ethically and effectively. He eventually retired, and I became a sole practitioner at that point in time. And I still maintain an office in Shenandoah and Port Carbon in addition to my municipal work and my county work.
All right, so now you're practicing, and it always, I always look for a person who has substance, okay? So you have a solid, thank God, good family.
Very good family.
And I think that's important because when you become judge, you got to keep an open mind and knowing all the facets. But now, you're practicing law. And from what I understand from people that have, I've been in Pottsville every week and we have our shows every there, playing every day. Mentioned Bill Burke, and you have a great reputation, which is fabulous, okay? But why then, you're doing so well as an attorney, okay? Now you're saying, well, you want to become a judge. Why?
Well, I want to become a judge and contribute to society. I want to be there because I think at this point in my life, I've gained invaluable experience after 33 years, not only in the law, but with human nature, with people. I am a municipal solicitor in about 10 different municipalities, whether it's a zoning hearing board, a planning commission, a township, or a borough. And when you serve in that capacity, and I'd like to emphasize serve in that capacity because we only serve at the pleasure of the governing body, you have an opportunity to sit back. You have to listen to the citizen complaints, determine whether it's something you can act upon, whether it's permitted by the township code or the borough code. And in addition, my zoning hearing board experience, that's a court of the lowest record in Pennsylvania, other than the UCC Board of Appeals. And people from the community come and ask for permission, either a special exception or a variance to use their land. And I advise the zoning hearing board members, but my job is to sit there, similar to that of a judge, listen to it fairly, listen to the objections if there are any, then advise the zoning hearing board as to what the parameters are with the law and apply the law to the facts. So I think my experience in the law, coupled with my understanding of human nature, would greatly serve Schuylkill County.
What do you see now in the county of Schuylkill, in the courtroom? What do you think we need now more than ever in terms of electing judges?
Well, first off, I'd like to say right now we have 5 elected judges. They're all excellent judges. They're all excellent for different reasons, and hopefully I would be number 6, and I would be able to add to that compliment. And as I said, no one's the same person, and no one has the same expectations. But in considering my upbringing, having been working with my father, or perhaps just being in his knee practicing law from an early age, and then continuing my practice with people, say for instance from the public defender's office who cannot afford legal representation, protecting the rights of senior citizens, and serving governing bodies like townships and boroughs, I would be able to bring in a understanding of what people problems were and what they confront.
So you have all issues that would be coming in front of you, right?
Yeah, you know, the Court of Common Pleas is a general trial court. I would have criminal cases, I would have civil cases, and you do hear appeals from magistrates, district judges, and you also hear appeals from zoning hearing boards. So it's my generalist practice would serve the bench well, because really, in a way, you're a generalist on the bench. You're not a specialist in one particular matter or another.
You know, Bill, I think it's a very difficult position, particularly being a judge, because, you know, it's being objective, okay? And how do you become objective when you have a big case in front of you, and, you know, there's been things in the press, people reading, and there's all these different influences, and how does that not affect the judge? And how will it not affect you when you have all the media, you know, the guy is guilty, the girl's guilty, you know, via the media, and will that influence you?
No, and in fact, I've been through the drill, so to speak. I mean, yes, I mean, defending felony cases, you deal with the media. With regard to municipal cases, you deal with the media, and through my years of practice, I haven't let that distract me from doing my job. We recently had a very hotly contested zoning hearing board matter in Rush Township. The news media was there, and at the end I received the compliment that I had conducted the hearing very well, and my reply was, well, that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, that's how I conduct a courtroom, fairly and judiciously.
As a judge, sometimes you look at things a lot different than the plaintiff or the defense. And you have to have, I think you need some kind of compassion as a judge.
Yes.
For the particular person. And I think when you come from a great family background, and you've been very fortunate to have that background, because I had the same background. I mean, it was just great to have the parents I had and the family. So those are the kind of things that I think people look for, all right, in electing a judge. Now, we don't want to ever be come in front of you, but however, if I do have to come in front of you, I want to make sure that Judge Burke is going to be the kind of person that will be fair and listen to what I have to say.
Yes. Well, one thing I can tell you is one of my dad's dear friends, who's also a deceased attorney, his name was Robert McLaughlin. He practiced out of Ashland, and I had a divorce case, and Bob was on the other side. And I thought at that point in time, my job was to be, for lack of better terms, a pit bull. And I was on the phone with Bob, and Bob had known me for years, and he stopped me at that point in time, and he said, listen, young man, there's 3 sides to every story. My side, your side, and the truth. Let's work towards the truth. So what I would do is work towards the truth as a judge. I know there's 2 sides to every story. That's why we have judges, because you have 2 people that vehemently disagree, and they need someone to bring them in the middle, or just make a decision that's fair and in accordance with the law.
All right, now you've been campaigning, and you've been out there. What are you hearing? What are people telling you, okay, as to what they're looking for, comments? Because it's always interesting to find out how they think. I try to think what the viewers are thinking and asking these questions, but what have you been hearing?
Well, I'm a first-time candidate, and this has been quite the experience. But what I am hearing is this, that they want fairness. They want a fair shake. They're not looking for favors. They're not looking for a break. They're looking for fairness. And they say, look, if you could say you could give me a fair shake when I come into court, I'll vote for you.
So here's the concern. I have a lot of friends, I think I have. And what happens is sometimes if one of their family members, something happens and you have to report it, we have the community news, it's, Sammy, how could you do this and put that on your channel? And it's a very difficult situation. You know a lot of people. Boy, it's difficult sometimes to separate that from, being a fair judge.
Well, in this instance, like I said, 33 years of practice have basically made me a person that I could objectively sit back and emotionally remove myself. That may sound a little cold and callous, but that's your job, to emotionally remove yourself from the situation, look at the facts, look at the law, and make a decision. It's really not the judge to be a legislator or his job to be, or her job to be a legislator or an activist. It's one to sit there with impartiality.
Folks, I'm talking to Bill Burke, Attorney Bill Burke. He's running for judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Schuylkill County. And as I said before, it's very nice to have signs in your yard and show support, but if you don't know the person, particularly if you're running for a judge, school board members, they should definitely be telling people what they're doing, particularly what's happening in this country today. But here's Bill Burke on the Sam Lesante Show, making an investment to tell you all about him. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the Sam Lesante Show, folks. Remember, 24/7, ssptv.com. You get to watch all of our programs. And we're on Comcast 190 from 7 to 11 p.m. every day. Of course, 24/7 on Channel 13 and 513 Service Electric Cablevision, and Channel 92 Saturdays and Sundays from 7 to 11 p.m. When we did our scientific poll, and I say scientific, we had no control over it, Susquehanna Polling and Research, one of the questions in there was, what would you like to continue to have from our local neighborhood programs? And that was getting information to you, letting the people know, and particularly when it comes to religion, politics. Today we have Bill Burke, Attorney Bill Burke, who is running for judge in Schuylkill County. And I opened the show by telling you about, we see a lot of signs and we see a lot of billboards, but those signs are great only if you know who the person is. We're talking about a judge here, my friends. We're talking about a person that could affect your life for a long time. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about Bill, and of course this show runs all over the place. I would say if you're in Schuylkill County, you really would like to see who Bill Burke is. Bill, once again, I want to applaud you for coming on the show, making the investment that you have.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So in my business, I've been in this business many, many years, okay? And I feel that this is what I know because I'm in it. Now, when it goes to another area, I have to, streaming, I have to look at it differently. But now you're going to be a judge.
Yes.
And you're going to be in a courtroom. Mm-hmm. I want to know if that judge, or like that doctor, what experience you have. What do you bring to the table?
What I bring to the table is this. I'm in court regularly. Obviously can't mention names because of client confidentiality. I was in court Monday. Yesterday, unusually, I was not in court. I have 2 hearings this afternoon. I have 2 hearings tomorrow and 2 hearings on Friday. The court reporters in the courthouse often joke, are you going to have your mail delivered here? That's how much I'm there. I'm there 3-4 times a week. I'm also in front of magisterial district judges as well. So what I would bring is a breadth of experience where I'm there and I'm practicing. And I'm there in different capacities. I'm there for municipal matters, I'm there for Office of Senior Services matters, and I'm there to represent criminal defendants. Some people feel maybe that's not politically popular, but under our Constitution, you have a right to effective representation before the government takes your liberty away. And that particular aspect of my work, I obviously take very, very seriously. But I'm there 4 to 5 times a week. A lot of lawyers don't make it into court. That's not a bad thing, because some practice real estate, some just do probate, and they serve their clients very, very well. And it's a very honorable aspect of the profession. But if you're looking for a judge of the Court of Common Pleas, one would think you would want an attorney who's sitting in court on a regular basis, and that's what I do. I am sitting in court on a regular basis. So
let me give you this scenario. So a person has to go to court, and the lawyer says, okay, we're prepared, we're going into, and the person says, well, who's the judge? And the person says, it's Judge Bill Burke. And so how would you like to be known? Or so, and so sometimes, oh my God, you don't want to be in front of that guy or this girl, or you know, they have this reputation. Okay, what would you want that person to think when the attorney says, you know, your judge is going to be Judge Bill Burke tomorrow? Well, what comfort do you have for that person?
Well, the comfort is this. Basically, Judge Bill Burke would be fair and impartial. Certainly, if it was a family member or a close friend, I would recuse myself. But the person would receive a fair shake. And I'm mindful of rights of criminal defendants. I'm mindful of rights of the Commonwealth. I'm mindful of the rights of any party litigant. But it'd be a fair and impartial tribunal. As far as what happens afterwards, if someone commits a criminal act, unless there's certain mitigating circumstances, there would be a penalty for that. But it would be meted out fairly and in accordance with the law and the facts of the case. So what I would like to convey is what I said earlier with my father's late friend, Attorney McLaughlin. I would understand that there's 2 sides to every story, but then you have to reach the truth, and that Bill Burke would reach the truth fairly and impartially.
Okay, so now here's a touchy question. Today, as we're seeing what's happening with different judges in the political atmosphere, you have what they call a conservative judge and a liberal judge, all right? So when you have conservative values, how much does that influence your decision? You have liberal values, how much does that affect your decision?
Well, with regard to the job as a judge, it's apolitical, but in my particular life, I've lived my life conservatively. I would take the role of judge as that of being a fair and impartial arbiter. I would not be a legislator. I would not interpret the law the way I would want it to be. Yeah. I would interpret the law the way it's written, the way the state legislator wrote it, because I wasn't elected to do that job, to write the law. I'm there to interpret and apply the law. So in that particular respect, I'm an originalist, and I would be a fair and impartial individual to hear cases.
You know, you brought something up that a lot of people don't understand. I think they do, but sometimes someone say, well, why did he only give him this, or she only give him that sentence, okay? Understanding that you have to listen or by the rules of what legislator says. So it's not your, you know, you're just following the rules, right? And if you need that change, you have to go to the legislator to change.
Yeah, it's direct democracy. You go to the person who was elected to write the law, whether it's a borough council person, a township supervisor, a state legislator. I mean, they're elected there to write the laws. And when you're sitting there in the judiciary, it's the job to be fair and impartial, but also apply the law as it's written. It's not your job to rewrite the law of people who were democratically elected.
Yeah. So I'm at home, and I don't know Bill Burke. I see your signs, as I said before. Now I want to know, well, why should I, you know, without people telling me what to do, why is it important for me to vote for Bill Burke for judge?
Well, that kind of leads me into my speech last night in front of a group of people. Campaigning has been a heck of an experience. This is my first time. And I was at a place called the Schuylkill Haven Legion, and I was campaigning. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I had my sticker on, and a woman came up to me and she had said, you know, I was driving down 183 and 443 state routes, and I saw this sign, and it said, elect Bill Burke judge. And I turned to my husband and I said, who the heck is Bill Burke? So, of course, my balloon was burst a bit, but then I decided to talk to her. And who is Bill Burke? Well, Bill Burke is an attorney for 33 years. He's practiced extensively in different areas of the law. He is an originalist, as I had mentioned. I live my life conservatively. I've had one hometown, that's Port Carbon, and I've had one wife. Her name is Lori. And I would be the type of judge that you think would be able to conduct himself in accordance with the office.
Hence my opening to the show, okay? Where, you know, I see your name and I don't know who you are, but you know what, Bill? You could have a zillion signs out there. To me, it doesn't mean anything until I know who the person is. I think that's so important.
Well, that's why we're getting out. I mean, this past Saturday, God bless my wife and my daughter, we were at 5 different events, a trout rodeo, 3 Easter egg hunts, and another function at a fire company. And that's my job. It's my job as a lawyer to explain my client's case, but now it's my job to explain why I should be a member of the Court of Common Pleas. It's not a birthright. It's not something that's given to you. You have to work for it. And that's what I intend to do, to get my name out and to get my vision out as to becoming a judge in the Court of Common Pleas.
Well, I wish you, as I wish everyone who's running for office, the very best.
Thank you.
And bring good values to the courtroom. Folks, if you want to know more about Bill Burke, excuse me, Facebook is Bill Burke for Judge, BillBurkeForJudge.com. I did it yesterday. I heard of him, but I wanted to know more about him. This show shows you who the person is. Now, when you see that sign, elect Bill Burke for Judge, you're going to know who that sign, who the person is. Once again, I wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay? We'll see you next time.